Entrepreneur is basically a word that came about when my colleague and I sat down, and we had a lot of research on festivals and artists working in that space. And we realized that creative entrepreneur is not really the right word to frame it. And we wanted to have one term and not separate business and creative. So purposely, we put the two together. We had a number of different words in mind, but eventually we decided that entrepreneurs may be like seniorpreneur or youthpreneur, or it's really combining artists and being an entrepreneur in one word. We struggled to get it published at first because it's a new term, and a lot of people thought no, but we've got the word creative entrepreneur already. Why should we try a new term? But it stuck, and I think it's almost like giving a bit more acknowledgement to the combination of the two by having the one word with the combined words. Networking is definitely a key managerial skill, but also an entrepreneurial skill, because part of building networks is not just sitting back and waiting for people to build relationships with you. It's actually a word where you have to go out. It's a word where there's some work involved from your side as well. So networking is not a one-way street. It's really looking at all the potential relationships, direct and indirect. It might not be someone that you know, but it might be someone that a friend might have access to, or you might have to go through a couple of gatekeepers to get to the right person. But it's that mindset of relationships are important. You have to manage it. What I found in a lot of different research, not only with creatives, but with especially female entrepreneurs, with female CEOs, they would have a specific personal way of managing relationships. And whether that would be a structured approach where they would have a filing cabinet and they would, rotate. Oh, I haven't made contact with them in 3 months, I should move them up, that kind of thing. Or reminders on the email. Oh, I haven't made contact with this person in 2 months, I should maybe send a quick email. Or through LinkedIn, having reminders. Oh, it's a new position, they took up a new position, or a birthday. Let's stay in contact. So really networking as part of management, not only for managers, but actually as part of career management, as part of a creative managing different projects. Networking is so important. Those kinds of social relationships that might not be that structured, that you don't have to connect with them every day, so it's more flexible. That's so important as well. Because a lot of the social networks that we have will be at a different level. It's not just project orientated, it's more about the emotional energy that you can get from those connections. And everybody will have their own network. So to have that direct link to a friend that might have studied with you and now they work for a bigger company, the speed to build the trust that you need to actually be introduced to someone else is so much faster, because you've got that experience. You've already built that reputation and credibility with that person. They know you, and then they can actually write a more authentic, because that person actually knows you. It's not just a random email. Oh, do you know me? I worked on that project. We haven't seen each other for 2 years, that kind of introduction. It's more, oh, this is my friend from university. We've worked together on these projects. So the tone is different, and the success rate will be much faster as well. Well, when we talk about digital media and social networking sites, there's so many out there. And what I found with the research, a lot of creatives actually use LinkedIn. which I thought is really a very businessy type kind of forum or discussion place. But really a lot of people would use that as a place just to get their portfolio on paper at first, but also to have these different networks that you can tap into, because you can follow certain galleries or you can follow theatre companies. And through others, you could be introduced to new connections all the time. So it's not something that you have to do on the run, like cold calling all the time. You actually have something that you can refer to. What I also found is basically Facebook and more visual outlets like Pinterest or Instagram. A lot of artists use that, and of course YouTube videos, vlogs and blogs and those kinds of things. It's really a mix. The most successful ones would be involved in a lot of different media, a lot of different outlets, a lot of different networks that they can tap into, because each of these sites will have a different purpose. Now, to just have it, to just have a LinkedIn site because you think you should have one is probably not the best way to go. First, to think about what you want to achieve and then start with your campaign. But a lot of the things that you do in one place, you can actually just tone down and have a short tweet. And then maybe a reference to the LinkedIn site. And what I found with a lot of the more successful creatives, they would have a range of these outlets available that they can utilize to get their work out in different networks. What I found with my research, when you look at networks, what's the most important elements? And the themes that came from the qualitative research is really, from the interviews, you could get this sense that building networks is one thing, and you can put it in a box and say, oh, this is so important for managing and all of that. But how do you start it? And sometimes it's like a 7-year overnight success kind of option. You build relationships for a long time before you can actually get some results from it. So with that comes trust, repeated encounters, so building that credibility, showing up on time, the work ethic, building your reputation as you go along, and then people start to trust you and people start to think, they are, going to be there when I need them to be there. They are going to deliver on time. So unfortunately, I don't think there's a quick fix and, yes, I've got my networks in a week. It's something that happens over time. You build it over time. But it's really important to keep in mind that trust is important. If you break trust, it will take some time to restore it. And also credibility, very important to walk the talk. If you are going to say that this is what I can do and this is what I'm going to do that. Be authentic in that as well, so that people can trust you. And then also when you think about connectivity and how you engage with people, the respect side of it. Respect is earned. It's not just a given. So even if you have 20 great productions behind you, it's still, the respect is earned, and that's really important. But also to show respect, and then also having maybe a style or find a way in which you can manage everything. Because sometimes there's a lot of demands on your time, and not to disappoint really. I think how you manage things is quite important. Grahamstown is a tiny little town in the Eastern Cape in South Africa, and not a lot of people go there that often, because there's not a lot to do basically. So when they started to think about the economic development, they started to think about actually how are we going to draw more people to this tiny little town and really build the community. So with the Grahamstown Arts Festival, it's a very multicultural environment, and that's one of the obstacles that they faced when they started, because having an arts festival but now realizing that there's more than 11 different cultures that's going to participate, and how to give each of these cultures a place and a sense of belonging, and also to showcase all of that in a way that it's actually going to be practical and economically viable. So the Grahamstown Arts Festival started out as a economic exercise, and eventually it evolved as a more of a social cohesion exercise where people come together. They can celebrate their own culture but also celebrate other cultures, use the arts as a way of expressing all of these wonderful richness of different cultures, but also bringing it all together so that it's something that can be packaged. You can build a community, you can draw larger crowds. We found the same with another festival in Potchefstroom, also a very tiny town, a lot of mining activity and sporting and educational institutions around, but not really something for the arts. It's not a major centre, it's not going to offer a lot of the theatres and other things that some of the other larger towns or cities might offer. And same thing, communities come together. It becomes like a celebration for a week, but it also offers the opportunity to creatives to actually build their own skills and training networks and market. So it's really a good way of getting people together, building capacity, and also trying to establish something. And I mean, some of these festivals are now in their 20th year, and it's still running, and it's just getting bigger, and that's fantastic because there's so many to choose from. But still, especially these kinds of art festivals where they bring people together but also build capacity, is the ones that are more successful. So to measure success, what I found is basically when you look at entrepreneurs and how they measure success, and to choose a festival to go back to, it's really a sense of belonging. And to find a place where they can actually express themselves, they would go back to that, even though they might not make as much money as at a different festival. So what I found from the research is really it's that sense of belonging, that sense of freedom. I can express myself. So it's not just the money that's important to most of these entrepreneurs. It's really that community and feeling as if they are contributing something. It's a higher order of fulfillment, really. It's not just money, because then they can do anything commercial. So what I found is basically they go back to certain festivals because they feel embedded in it. They feel part of it. They feel they have a voice. It's not just management and us here in a corner. It's really that connection, working together. And also the connection to the crowd or the community, the people that come and support these events. That really plays a big role in whether or not they would go back and whether or not they feel appreciated. I think that's a very important part of it as well, to feel valued. And that would bring them back rather than just the paycheck or how much money they would make over the course of the week. Yes, well, when we talk about closer to home in the Sunshine Coast, it's such a wonderful environment, and there's a lot of things happening apart from just Noosa and the creative markets and having all these outlets nowadays for artists to showcase their work. There's also the refinery. The incubator that they started with the support of the Sunshine Coast Council, and having that space, actually that dedicated space, is really important. So Megan Rowland, she's at the steer basically of this whole process and guiding the process through. They just had their first incubator, and that started in April. And it's a process where it's actually competitive as well, but it's open to everybody. It doesn't matter what your what your background might be, but it's competitive at first, and then they learn a lot of skills going through this process. So I think that's really fantastic to see that it's not only individual organizations, it's not only not-for-profit kind of organizations, it's really the Sunshine Coast Council also getting involved in this process of driving the creative space and trying to make the Sunshine Coast a more inclusive place where people can find that space where they can actually work and develop these skills.